Hi everyone, this is Dr. Stefan. In this video, I'd like to do a little bit of a reaction video to conspiracy theories. Of course, yeah, non-COVID. So this is regarding things that were happening before COVID, because I deliberately didn't want to raise too much controversy. But you will see that there are some of these conspiracy theories that have been going on for a long time. Nothing to do with COVID, but others. They've been going on for centuries probably. And I think this black background is perfect for a conspiracy theory video. But okay, I'll move on to the article, which lists 6 top conspiracy theories in the United States. Now, obviously, I'm not an American doctor. I work in the United Kingdom. I'm a Romanian, hence my Romania represent football t-shirt. Anyway, let's forget about that. But let's dive into this one a little bit. I haven't actually read the whole thing, but I just wanted to show you the listing of conspiracy theories in this table, and to just sort of react to some of them. I've only read like the first 3. So let's look at it together. The first one is about cancer treatments, right? So the Food and Drug Administration is deliberately preventing the public from getting natural cures for cancer and other diseases because of pressure from drug companies. Oh God. Okay. So this is actually shocking, because it actually leads many people to not seek effective treatment. And we've had a huge scandal in Romania about this, maybe 10 years ago. Close to where my city is, in northeast Romania, we actually had a clinic that was shut down by the government because the people who were working there in that private clinic, they were actively steering people away from getting proven treatments. They were steering them away from the public hospitals where they could get those treatments from the oncology institutes and stuff. And they were actually selling them their own treatments. And how is that not shocking? That to me was just, I was so angry when I read about it. I think it was about 10 years ago or more. It was just shocking. It was just like, how could people do that? And it's all probably stemming from these sort of conspiracy theories that are prevalent throughout the world. And people are desperate when they get a diagnosis of cancer and they just want some cure. But we don't have a natural cure for cancer. We really don't. We don't have any proven treatments in that realm. We have therapies that work. We can do potentially surgeries for removing cancers when we catch them early. And it's really important to go to your doctor early if you suspect that you have cancer, because that's when you have the highest chance of treating it, curing it completely. But God, so this leads to a lot of problems. And then drug companies, yes, they are immensely rich. They are huge companies. But so is Google, so is Amazon, so are all these other companies. It's not only the drug companies that make huge profits, right? The telecom companies, the phone company makes a lot of money as well. The car companies make a lot of money, but they produce products that we actually use. So why is it drug companies are singled out here? I don't know. But I guess it's to do with medicine and healthcare and how it treats vulnerable people. And, you don't, but yeah, look, so as a doctor, I find that many drug companies, yes, I acknowledge that they are trying to sell their products, but they have also developed those products as well. So it's something we need to acknowledge, because most of the medication that we have today wouldn't have been developed at all in the first place had it not been for a financial reward for these companies to put these drugs on the market, to do the research into producing these drugs, to prove that they actually work. So I think in this instance, drug companies are more of a partner, especially today when they are very well regulated. So actually the pharma industry is the most heavily regulated industry in the world. It's not the same for tech. Not the same for tech, really. So I think the tech giants have much less regulation imposed on them as the pharma companies. Like even registering a trial, for example, in the United Kingdom where I work, it just takes ages. You have to go through so many approval processes, even if your trial doesn't even involve a drug. If I just want to do an observation of 2 groups of patients and I want to consent them into a study, you have to go through so many regulatory processes to ensure that you are protecting their confidentiality, to protect their safety. If they are in the hospital grounds, what will it do if there's an emergency? And that's even before actually giving them any drug. So it's a very heavily regulated industry, the research industry. And drug companies have to play by those rules. And yes, they may try to bend them at times, but there is very strong pushback from the government. And I think it's something that is not really acknowledged. But anyway, this is the conspiracy theory. Oh, I'm getting serious here, but yeah, it's a difficult one because it leads to problems for regular people, this conspiracy theory. And yes, I've heard of it. Now, health officials know that cell phones cause cancer, but are doing nothing to stop it because large corporations won't let them. Okay? So this one, I mean, if cell phones cause cancer, then why is everyone using a cell phone? Would you give up your cell phone? I don't think so. And if someone told you that, there's this link between cell phones and cancer. It's not really well proven, but there is some data. What if someone said that? Would everyone just suddenly give up their cell phones? The convenience of being able to call someone in an emergency? I don't think so. So I think cell phones are a step forward to improve communication between people. And actually, it's a small radio. So if you can imagine that the cell phone is a small radio, but then you also have a TV in your house, you have a Wi-Fi router, things like that. So if all of these devices cause so much cancer, why isn't it that we see it? I don't know. It's just one of those things. Is the government hiding this data? I don't think so. Again, it's one of those things that catches on because it's, it's something that's really popular. You can see that there's a common theme with the conspiracy theories. There's always something that's very, very common, used by everyone. But then the conspiracy theorist who is peddling this stuff tries to give you an alternative view that sort of makes you feel that you are special for believing that thing that not many people believe. So it's a question of superiority, I think, from the part of the conspiracy theorists. It's a very strange psychological phenomenon. And I think it's very interesting. I think there isn't enough research into conspiracy theories and how they emerge psychologically, because it would be very, very helpful to know how to combat that early in a way that's not manipulative, but actually to raise awareness for people that they need to be careful what they listen to. So that leads me to this third one, this one. The CIA deliberately infected large numbers of African Americans with HIV under the guise of hepatitis inoculation program. So there were a lot of these, actually. I've heard about these. These have to do with a lot of research. So research is a huge source of conspiracy theories, because everyone thinks that people who take part in clinical trials, for example, are guinea pigs. And there's a lot of stigma around that. And how do we get rid of that? And I can tell you from my practice. So I do take part in clinical trials quite a lot as a physician here in the UK, and we run our research as well. And it's very, very strange because you can actually see it in some cases that there is a lot more resistance from the part of minority populations, not only in the UK, in Romania it's the same, probably in the United States it's the same, all over the world. You have a lot more resistance from minority populations because they feel threatened by research, because they have heard about these sort of things in various forms. Now, I didn't know about this one specifically, about the HIV, hepatitis inoculation conspiracy, but I've heard of others, and they're all similar. There's a minority which is vulnerable, potentially, and then someone taking advantage of that vulnerability. But like I said, we have made huge progresses in this regard. You cannot, for example, nowadays do clinical trials in vulnerable populations. You need to define what that is. There are government guidelines you need to adhere by if you're doing a research project. So there's quite a lot of protection for many people. But however, even probably 20 years after we've established those regulations and who can take part in a clinical trial or not, for example, it's very, very tricky, for example, to do a clinical trial in prison populations, right? So because these people are vulnerable, they're imprisoned, some of their rights are stripped away. So doing medical research in that setting is really very ethically dodgy, I would say. But even if we have these regulations in place to protect people, the conspiracy behind it and all these sort of rumors persist. And I actually see it, and that's shocking actually, because I see it sometimes. So people from immigrant backgrounds, minority backgrounds, do not sign up for research. They're the ones who generally say no, they don't want to take part, even if you present all the information and all the steps that you will take to protect their life, their confidentiality, their personal interests. Even if they have the option to withdraw from research at any time, because this is a given for most research studies nowadays, especially in the Western world, they still are reluctant. And I think it's this is a bad one, because it does affect a lot of drug development in the medical field. Let's stick to that. It affects drug development, especially in these population groups, because sometimes we may have different responses in different populations. So for example, male versus female, African American versus Asian background versus white background, we may have different sort of responses to medications. And actually, if we don't do the research in those exact population groups, we may actually run into trouble, because the data from the research study performed in all white Caucasian males, for example, may not apply to the general population. So it's one of those things that leads to problems. And these conspiracy theories are funny and somewhat dangerous, because they lead to problems 50 years into the future. Anyway, let's move on. So the global dissemination of genetically modified foods by Monsanto Inc. is part of a secret program called Agenda 21, launched by the Rockefeller and Ford Foundations to shrink the world's population. Oh God. So there are books about this, about how population needs to come down and all these things. And there's a conspiracy on how to reduce the world's population. And I'm just thinking, why in the world, this is my response, this is my default response to this, why in the world, this happened with COVID as well, because again, genetically engineered vaccine, anyway, so why would someone who wants to depopulate the planet use some genetically modified organism, when you can just you just turn on the news and you see how much war is going on, famine, all these things are happening in the world that are not being addressed. All these things are happening, which are just causing death on a massive scale, right? We have these things. Why would a government not do that if they wanted to depopulate the planet? I'm just wondering. Why would you need this complex, sneaky conspiracy to genetically modify something? It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And it's just, and you can see that Agenda 20. You have these little details that are placed in the conspiracy theory, I think, on purpose to make you believe it, to make it sound legitimate. You have these fancy things like Agenda 21, something very specific. And then, of course, everyone who reads that conspiracy theory will be like, okay, let me Google Agenda 21. What is this thing? And then, Rockefeller. What's the Rockefeller Foundation? Oh, they sound rich. They definitely have their own interests at heart. Ford Foundations, these foundations, they are organizations that aim to control. So you can see that there are these little details that are snuck in there that probably don't stand water. These arguments don't stand water if you include these things there, these associations to the big names. It's just like dropping names in order to increase the value of the conspiracy theory, if that makes sense. But it's just like, it's an odd one, this one. I didn't hear about this one because Monsanto is probably not a big thing in Europe. I think I didn't hear, but we have similar things, right? Less about genetically modified organisms. I don't know. It's strange. And actually, I would just venture something really controversial here. Some of the genetically modified foods may actually solve world hunger. And that's something that many people do not actually talk about, especially now, 2022, summer of 2022, September 2022, when there is a huge shortage of fertilizer in the world because of war and conflict. And that leads to very reduced yields in crops all over the world, especially in developing countries. Imagine if you had plants that you could grow and process into food that didn't require so much fertilizer. That would be a solution for world hunger. And no one talks about that. Everyone just says, oh, genetically modified is all bad. I don't think so. I think if it's done properly with the safeguards in place to protect human life, to do the proper research before, you may actually have high yielding crops that actually solve world hunger, and that people will die of hunger in a matter of weeks, months, right? But if the genetically modified organism, let's say, is not as healthy for you, that's a problem that's a little bit later down the line. I think we need to fix the famines of the world first. And if you think about genetically modified foods causing a lot of health issues, why not just talk about all the bloody fast food that we eat all the time? Is that healthy? Is that healthy in the long run? All that saturated fat that we eat and all the fries and all the McDonald's and KFCs of the world. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You don't need this fancy conspiracy theory if you want to eat yourself into oblivion. You just go to the nearest mall. Well, anyway, that makes me, it's crazy. Okay, I haven't read these ones at the end. Let's see. Doctors and the government still want to vaccinate children even though they know these vaccines cause autism and other psychological disorder. That's very wrong. So this one's all over the world. We know it. We have it in Europe. It's taking hold. We have a lot of influencers who have built their social media presence by peddling these conspiracy theories to desperate parents. And it's shocking. It's making me angry. It's making me angry because this thing about autism came about from a bad research project. Bad research paper. It has been disproven so many times by much better quality research, and yet that seed of conspiracy has been left. And it's just something that I don't even know what this is. You can see where this has led. Remember, this article is from 2014. Okay, so this was before COVID, before the COVID pandemic and all the craziness that ensued with the vaccination. So this issue with vaccination has been brewing for years. And when we had the perfect storm of COVID and the new vaccine, this just ballooned out of proportion. And all these conspiracy theories really affected the world. And I can tell you that, for example, in my country, in Romania, we've only managed to vaccinate maybe half the population, even with desperate efforts by the government, financial incentives, promotional campaigns. Everything was done to try to convince people to get vaccinated. But after the first burst of, a third of the population really got through the vaccine because everyone was like, yeah, that makes sense. We will take the vaccine to protect our lives. After that, we got to the resistance, which was caused by these sort of conspiracy theories. And actually, in developing countries, these are very prevalent. It may not be in the United States as prevalent, but in developing countries, where social media communication is sometimes much faster than government to population communication, this takes hold dramatically. Right, this one. Public water fluoridation is really just a secret way for chemical companies to dump dangerous byproducts of phosphate mines into the environment. Ooh. I haven't heard about this one. No, this is new to me, but I don't know. Like, I think every time that there's a chemical put into drinking water or something that is used on a massive scale, there will be a conspiracy about it. It's impossible. If a lot of people use cell phones, yes, someone will say that cell phones are bad. If someone puts fluoride in the water to protect people from getting cavities and seeing the dentist more often, oh no, this is bad for you. Even though it saves so much struggle for many people who don't need to have cavities anymore. Oh, just like, yeah, no. So this is just crazy. I don't know. And of course, you have this weird thing added in there. Byproducts of phosphate mines to be dumped in the water. Why not just dump it in the desert somewhere? I mean, really, what's the point? It's like, what? And like, if that mine is in the middle, it's in the sticks somewhere in the middle of nowhere, why wouldn't it dump that byproduct, whatever it is, just next to the mine? why would it take it all the way to the place where they treat the water and put it in the water there and use those trucks to, to ferry that byproduct back and forth, that chemical back and forth? Why not just dump it the nearest place they could find? It just doesn't make sense. So all these things to me is just like crazy, because if you think about it in a logical way, it just doesn't stand water. But I think it depends on the mindset it catches you in. So for example, if you are in the mindset that the government is all bad, you will search for a lot of confirmation to that thing, and that's confirmation bias for you, and that's a really, really big thing. But anyway, this was the article 2014. I fear looking at the 2022 articles related to COVID, because that's been a huge problem, and we've dealt with it to some extent in Europe, but it hasn't been good. So Western Europe did very well with the vaccination campaign for COVID. Eastern Europe did super badly. And it's all to do with these sort of conspiracy theories. So anyway, this was the video for today. I hope this was something relatively new for you. This is a young channel, so if you like this sort of content, do let me know. I'm trying to try different things for the channel. I do like to educate people about medicine if I can, to teach people about how to deal with their respiratory conditions. But I also think this reaction video might be, a different way for doctors and patients to communicate with each other. So I think I'm just trying new things. But let me know if this is something that you've enjoyed, if I should do more, if I should just shut up and don't talk about conspiracy theories as a doctor because I'm part of the conspiracy. Anyway, let me know in the comments below. Do subscribe if you like the channel, and I'll see you in future videos, I guess. So all the best and good health. Take care.